Hey everybody, Chris Collard here with Gone Jeepin'. Today we are installing the Genesis dual battery system in a 2015 JK here.
That's right, 15.
My good buddy Eric Heikla, known each other since high school. So he bought this Jeep a couple months ago and started to do some upgrades. So first thing, because he's got a winch on the front, it's going to be using some accessories like a fridge freezer and other things, charging systems, and camping for more than one night at a time. We wanted to put in dual battery system with a management system as well. So that is going to be a Genesis mount and their dual battery isolator system. And the batteries that we're using on this are going to be Odysseys.
Odyssey batteries, right.
Odyssey Group 34s for that particular mount. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's a really nice looking product. It's nice formed steel, and the system actually comes almost completely put together with most of the components wired. Looking forward to seeing how it all fits in here. There's all kinds of stuff over here on the passenger side of the JK. You got your battery, you got some evap canister, management system, gizmo, right. All of your electronics, air filter,
yep.
Yeah, and power steering reservoir, and all this stuff's got to be removed. And then underneath that is a large plastic mounting system that mounts to the fender well. So we're going to dig into the instruction manual and start pulling this thing apart.
All right, let's get it on.
Maybe. So the evap solenoid has 2 lines going to it. You got to take these little clips off. You got to push in this little button, pull the line off. And there it is. Put these on the side. Then you got to take the air cleaner off, assembly out. A couple of bolts right here on top of the radiator. And that comes out like that. Got a couple of clips on the bottom that are like a rubber grommet that holds it in. Got to kind of wiggle it out like that. Put that one off to the side. Okay, what's next? Next is got to move move the power steering reservoir off to the side. Get that out of the way. And you got a couple bolts for the mount. You got the 3 up here, 3 in the back.
So right now we're going to disconnect the fuse box. First we're going to pull the tray open. We'll disconnect right there. And we're going to set that aside just like that. So we're going to take this harness and flip it up out of the way, and then we're going to remove the battery box. There's 3 clips, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to use a screwdriver, give it a little pop. There's 1. And here we go. This one's a little tough here, and there we go. Okay, so we're going to take the tray out and we're going to back it off of the firewall. Going to give it a little twist. That was fairly easy.
Hey, what was that all about? Looking at my safety flip-flops? All right, well, it is like, going to be 100 degrees today. Okay, so this is the stock battery tray slash fuse box tray and airbox tray. And what we've got to do is actually cut this off. The new Genesis mount gets rid of all of this, and what we keep is the airbox mount. So I'm going to grab I'm going to use a Sawzall, but I think I'm going to use a grinder. And there is the rough cut. We're going to clean up the edges here a little bit. Basically, you're just cutting right along, the front edge of the compartment that basically holds the fuse box.
Alright, now we're going to reinstall the new Genesis battery box. It's going to go in just the same way as the other one came out. Tuck and roll.
Alright, so there's 5 bolts that hold this mount on. The one we just put on the fender well, and then there's this one at the bottom. If you've got enough space in there to get your fingers in, it's actually beneath the tray on the sub mount. So get that started, and we got 3 for the these are the type with the embedded washer on the nut. Let's go on the firewall. All your wiring here tucks up in nicely behind the mount. Everything on the other side looks fairly clear. Doesn't look like we have anything pinching or anything that's going to rub on the batteries. So that looks good. I'm just going to tighten these bolts up. All right, so yeah, there's a couple little bolts that held the original mount on, and they poke out or intrude into the engine compartment, actually where the batteries are going to be. So we're going to cut them off. Yeah, so I don't like any sharp edges around the engine compartment, anywhere really. So I always want to like clean them up with a little flap. So it's really important to remember when you take all this apart. I mean, this stuff pretty much goes on the same. I mean, it's got one fitting, positive, negative on the battery, fuse box, power. But remember all the little nuts that you took off. Either mark them or place them back on the studs or the bolts when you take them off. Like this little power or ground here on the fender well. You want to make sure you get all that stuff back on. All right, ready to slide the fuse box down over the mount, and there's actually, you look down and there's a little post that this sits on. They're part of the design, and it should sit right on there. Just like that. I like that. That's a good snap kind of sound, right? So here's a little, what's left of the stock plastic tray mount gizmo, and this guy goes in with 2 bolts. Going to set that in. It holds the air box. Next is the power steering reservoir. It only fits in one way. Basically, it's got the bolt hole, and then it's got a little detent in the front to keep it from swinging or moving. Okay, that's secure. That's secure. We're ready for the air box. These little tabs I was talking about, basically they set right in on the rubber grommets down there. Make sure your electrical and everything's out of the way. Actually, we're ready for this air cleaner, which we need to get a new one now that we just put our greasy hands all over it. Sorry, Jeep. That's what's important, to pull the plenum off or disconnect it and loosen the bolts up here so you can actually move it around a little bit when you're trying to get this top of the airbox on. Slides in and fits down like that. Also, when we took it apart, you got this one air hose. You have to make sure that's on there nice and firm. Okay, so next step is we got to put this little evap canister controller on. It's got 2 vacuum lines on it, or hoses on it, and we're going to end up cutting, looks like we're cutting both of the existing hoses. Get the canister in. This top hose actually is going to fit right the way it's supposed to, but you want to measure. This bottom one is going to do a 180, and you want to measure against this fat hose, the top one. Measure 3 times, because you're going to snip this line off to make that connection, and you don't want to mess it up. I just want to put these hose clamps on so you can reach them later on without taking off the tires and pulling the transmission and the motor and every other piece of the vehicle. Just get to one little hose clamp. All right, you can see the top one is mounted to the small airline with a short stub connection here, a little piece of hose, and the lower one, or the large airline, is connected also with another piece of hose. Tighten that up and we'll hook up the electrical. Okay. All right, so next thing you want to do is you want to hook up the power to the fuse box. That's this red cable. You want to run it down below the evap solenoid. Sits on there on this little 14 mil bolt. It's got a little tab detent. You want to make sure that's in the hole so it gets a good seat. Right, so this is the heart of the Genesis system. It's just another 1/8 inch plate steel formed, nice welds. The center here is Cole Hersey 200 amp automatic relay. So this is kind of what makes things happen. Power comes in, vehicle detects, basically it's alternator sending out power. This is detecting how much voltage is on the start battery side. When it gets to a certain level, which I think is 13.2, it opens a circuit or closes the circuit and sends the power to the auxiliary system, which is the front battery. Yeah, so the idea is that the main battery gets fully charged. When there's enough juice in the main battery, it starts sending power to the auxiliary battery. The auxiliary battery basically gets charged. So you stop for the night, things are running, you got an inverter running, you got the fridge freezer running, a couple of accessories, and the voltage, basically once the vehicle's been shut down, the voltage will drop on both batteries. This thing will close the system when voltage gets down to 2.7, basically a safe level, a safe level for the start battery. All right, so it's a pretty cool little design. And make sure that you've got, when put this on, make sure you've got all your battery posts covered so you don't have a light show happening accidentally. This guy sets on so that the red bus is on the fender side and the black one, or the negative side, is next to the motor. Line up the holes. Basically got 4 weld nuts on the back side of on the bottom side of the mount. I'm gonna line those up loosely, get them torqued down later. Okay, so one of the things about this system, and I didn't mention this, but it comes just like this. This is how it comes out of the box. So I didn't add any of the wiring on here. It utilizes the factory negative terminal. So we're going to have the Genesis system basically on top of this post with the other original ground, or secondary ground. It also uses the positive side of the factory OE positive bank here. It's got a stud which is going to accept power going into the solenoid. So we're going to hook that stuff up, and the Genesis side negative to the start battery negative, and the Genesis side positive to the house battery or auxiliary battery positive on that side. Yeah, so one thing I forgot to do, looking at this extra black negative cable here, I'm like, what was that for? Well, I forgot that Eric's got a winch on the front, so strung that through underneath the fuse box, had plenty of cable running it up to the negative on the main. Anytime you've got dual batteries, it is generally accepted that you should run your winch or any very high draw utility off of your main battery, something like that, especially on a winch, because when you are maybe on the third wrap, 9,000 pound winch you're drawing, you can drop to upwards of 400 amps. And most of the systems, either A, not designed for it, or B, they just don't charge that fast. They'll put 20 or 30 amps to the system. Some of them, this one's actually 200 amps. So the final step, we've got the auxiliary battery, positive to the relay, negative to the relay, negative to the vehicle's grounding system, and then over to the negative bus. It also runs across to the negative post on the start battery. And last step in the process is hooking up the factory positive lead. Electrical's hooked up, and now I'm going to just snug down the top plate. But you don't want to crank it down so much that you're starting to compromise the structural integrity of the casing on the battery. One other thing about this is that this Genesis system has a manual override. So if you come in here nice and close, you can see this button. This is a manual link. I hit this button, it is going to automatically connect or link both batteries together. And that will last for 60 seconds. So it's only 60 seconds, but for example, the idea behind that is to start the vehicle. You can jump start the main off of the auxiliary so long as there's enough power in the auxiliary. This is a 200 amp continuous service, 500 amp surge. So I think it'd be probably pretty safe, but you probably also wouldn't want to, run the winch for 15 minutes trying to draw that kind of power. So that wraps up the install. What do you think, Eric? How long did that take us?
Well, roughly, I'd say 2 hours. We took our time with it, and it was really clean. I am ecstatic right now. Great product, heavy duty, and that's what I wanted. I want something that was going to look good and work good.
One of the things I liked was that they really looked at the stock system. Especially that big old tray. It basically went from the firewall to the radiator, and they incorporate part of it and get rid of all the junk in the back, and then their mount just fit in like a glove. I mean, all the bolts lined up. Yeah, I like the construction, I like the design. I like the fact you can put both batteries in the side by side in the JK, because not a lot of real estate anywhere else.
Right before I found this system, I was thinking I was going to have to mount it in the back, but here we are. It fits like a glove. It's snug, and leaves me room for another accessory on the other side over there. And we'll wait for that.
Now you can put your ARB fridge freezer in the back, and you got your winch line hooked up to the main air.
And I'm thinking ARB air, twin air, right over there.
Okay, well that might be the next project on Gone Jeepin', the new ARB twin air compressor for Eric Heikela's 15 JK.
There you go.
Let's fire it up.